She's Katy Montgomery. He's Justin Joseph. These best friends are serving subpoenas to bad advice weekly with Wrong Way Forward. The advice column reboot you never knew you needed. Sparks fly. And so does the hilarity. Now, here's Katy and Justin.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. I'm Justin Joseph, along with my college best friend, Katy Montgomery. And this week, we're going to tackle a lot of really interesting issues. We've also had some fun talking last week and in the last couple of episodes about some things that drive us nuts, as well as some issues that give us ick. But Katy, we've gotten really good response on some of our last episodes. What do you think?
We have gotten great response, and we want to thank everyone for joining us. But I think what has been most interesting is our discussion of raw dogging. And if I had $1 for every female that wrote me and said, I did not know that that is what raw dogging meant, I'm with you, Katy. I totally thought it was the viral travel trend. And I think what is interesting is it's made me think, like, what is happening? Like, do two guys just talking and hanging out go, I raw dogged it last night? I mean, I just don't understand how this even happened and how half of the population didn't even know what it meant.
And it's so funny because I literally had that same reaction when we talked about this initially. I thought it was insane that you didn't know what raw dogging meant, which as a male always has meant having sex without a condom.
But my point is that this was a group of men who needed to establish a term for it. We're
Right.
clearly talking about it. And then it sprinkled and it spread throughout the male community. So I just want to know, what are men talking about? Because women don't talk like that.
Well, most women don't. I agree with you. What's funny to me is I had the same experience being out there and people listening to the podcast. It's one of the top things that they're asking me about or talking about. And so I did a little bit of deeper dive. Did you know there were 5 stages of raw dogging?
Justin, I mean, is this a family program? I mean, who's listening?
Well, we're talking about 5 stages of raw dogging on the airplane, which is what you.
Okay.
I read an article that a man, he was a journalist. He's like, I'm going to try this because he too was aware of the trend, and he called it. He classified it into 5 different stages, and he basically said the first one is complete and utter dread, and this is like he knew if he wasn't going to be able to go to the bathroom on the plane, he couldn't drink coffee in the morning, and like everybody who travels, that's like the first thing they do. So stage 0 is complete and utter dread because he had to basically prepare himself not to go to the bathroom on the plane. Stage 1 was I spy with my little eye. He called it the coping mechanism. He said he observed everything in the plane around, people with jeans, what we've talked about before, people who weren't dressed appropriately. Stage 2 was regretting everything. He's now in that idle time on the airplane where he's basically bored out of his mind and he starts revisiting all of his past life mistakes. And so he called this regretting everything. Stage 3, reevaluating everything. He said he shifts from past regrets to present future priorities, like what he can do with getting married, all the things that he starts thinking about to plan going forward. Stage 4, manifest and chill. He's now coming into a surprising calm, he said. And stage 5 is the countdown. This is when he knows the flight's about to land and he has survived raw dogging. So I thought that was a funny experience.
I mean, again, created by men, pretty ridiculous. And I just want to say, this reminds me a lot of those people who go on like the month-long fast and they lose like 10 pounds. And then as soon as the fast is over, they go to Burger King, McDonald's, and then run by Dairy Queen and they gain all the weight back. This is the same thing. Like as soon as he gets off the plane, he's going to get a bourbon, a coffee, and a cheeseburger. Right. So what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, it's fun to have revisited that. Today, what are we talking about, Katy?
Well, today, because this episode conveniently falls very close to, I think it actually may be coming out on Thanksgiving. I'm already one step ahead. On Halloween, we're going to kind of break down some advice that Dear Prudence, as part of Slate Magazine, gave in October 23rd, 2014. And so someone wrote in about a Halloween question. And so I'll just share that right now.
Yeah, do.
So, Dear Prudence, I live in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the country, but on one of the more modest streets, mostly doctors and lawyers and family business owners. I've noticed that on Halloween, what seems like 75% of the trick-or-treaters are clearly not from this neighborhood. Kids arrive in overflowing cars from less fortunate areas. I feel like this is inappropriate. Halloween isn't a social service or a charity in which I have to buy candy for less fortunate children. Obviously, this makes me feel like a terrible person because what's the big deal about making less fortunate kids happy on a holiday? But it just bugs me because we already pay more than enough taxes towards actual social services. Should Halloween be a neighborhood activity, or is it a legitimately free for all in which all people hunt down the best candy grounds for their kids? So she's pretty loaded here, and clearly not with enough candy for the kids in the neighborhood. And so Dear Prudence gives it to her and says, in the urban neighborhood where I used to live, families who were not from the immediate area would come in fairly large groups to trick or treat on our streets, which were safe, well lit, and full of people overstocked with candy. It was delightful to see little mermaids, Spider-Men, ghosts, and the occasional axe murderer excitedly run up and down our front steps, having the time of their lives. So we'd spend an extra $20 to make sure we had enough candy for kids who weren't as fortunate as ours. And there you are on the impoverished side of Greenwich or Beverly Hills with the other struggling lawyers, doctors, and business owners. Your wine makes me kind of wish people from the actual poor side of town come this year, not with scary costumes, but with real pitchforks. Stop being callous and miserly and go to Costco, you cheapskate, and get enough candy to fill the bags of the kids who come one day a year to marvel at how the 1% live. And so I guess, Justin, my first question on this is, was this advice the wrong way forward?
And I say yes. I say it's absolutely the wrong way forward. And I'll start that by telling a story. When I was young, I've always had a creative side, and we lived in a neighborhood in Florida, and it was a very, very middle-class neighborhood. And one of the things that I wanted to do is I turned our garage into a haunted house. And so
Can I interrupt? Justin also did that with his fraternity.
I did.
And it was the most elaborate undertaking that ever took place at Loyola University, New Orleans.
And of course, I followed none of the rules. And the day before that haunted house was supposed to open, because it was funded by student government, and we built it. We probably spent several tens of thousands of dollars building it out. And the day before we were supposed to open, the fire department shows up to shut us down because we weren't up to fire code.
Yeah,
and
but
do you remember that?
Stop you. Yeah, you just kept going. Okay, so go back. Childhood. You're curious. You're creative. You're building the haunted house of your dreams in your parents' garage.
In my parents' garage. And the thing I remember about it is my parents firstly thought it was the most nuts idea ever, but they let me do it. And it wasn't elaborate. We were probably putting sheets up for the walls and such like that. But 6 or 7 of my best friends dressed up for Halloween. We manned the haunted house. And I remember when Halloween night came around, there was a line around the block to get into this thing because people had seen it being built. And so why I think Prudence's advice is the wrong way forward is because if you're going outside of your neighborhood just to get better candy, you're missing the point of Halloween. Halloween is about getting to know your neighbors. It's about knocking on the door of the person next door and saying trick or treat so that they recognize who their neighbor is and so that you can have an interaction with them. And so if it's only about getting the best candy, I think it's the wrong way forward. And my advice is that you stay in your neighborhood and get to know your neighbors.
So, of course, I'm going to disagree with you. I think Prudence gave really great advice, but did not give complete advice.
Okay.
I think, first of all, she should tell this woman, I think it's time for you to go to therapy and explore things like being a narcissist and being self-evolved and not being able, again, to read the room. The fact that this woman had this thought, actually drafted this letter, thought that there could be a potential that someone would take her side, knowing that it could potentially be published, she probably had to do an edit or two, and then push the send button to mail this into Dear Prudence. I think that there is a bigger takeaway here, that it's not you're being a cheapskate and you're callous. It's more of, what is basically wrong with you, that you think that there will be agreement on this, and that most people...
What do you mean be agreement? What do you mean?
Agreement that yes, that you should not be putting out extra candy for the children coming into your neighborhood. I think if we asked, 10 people, I think 9.5 would agree that just put out the extra candy. These are poor kids, and you are highly privileged. And what's the sweat of running by Costco and getting the jumbo bag of candy?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all that there should have been extra candy put out. But do you disagree with me that Halloween should be about staying in your neighborhood and getting to know your neighbors?
I disagree, because I think some children do not live in good neighborhoods, and I think it's not safe to go out. I don't think it's well lit. I think we are incredibly fortunate, and we don't know what it's like to live in a neighborhood that doesn't have resources, that's median income is below level, that has a place where there's food deserts, where there might not even be access to buy candy and to share, and that a lot of people might be working hours that are not amenable to going trick-or-treating. I mean, a lot of people, in lower income neighborhoods are probably working night shifts, late shifts. I mean, that's an assumption. And so I think, again, it's a holiday to give children. And to give a personal story, I lived in a nice neighborhood, and the Pentecostals would come in. And so all I just remember is seeing girls with really long hair, no makeup, house on the prairie dresses. And they would come out, and I mean, you couldn't miss them because they all looked exactly alike. I mean, they had hair down.
Is this like I don't know what a Pentecostal is. This like an Amish person?
No, but it is a religious sect. If I think correctly, they speak in tongues, but okay. Women are told no makeup, no slacks. They need to be very modest. They're the ones that tend to kind of put their hair up in some kind of poof. I'm not really sure how that's executed, but you could see them because they all looked alike. And I just remember as a kid thinking, thank God that they get this opportunity, because they don't get to dress up. Everybody knows that, like on Halloween, your parents let you take risks. You could wear extra makeup. You could dye your hair blue because it was a costume.
You could dress slutty.
You could dress slutty. And here are these girls with dresses down to their ankles. Some of them might have been wearing aprons. It almost looked like their hair was crimped, when getting your hair crimped was not cool. And I'm like, if they can have this one night and get themselves some candy and run around in this neighborhood and not have to go to church and eat a potluck, good for them. And so it's like, what's the sweat of giving somebody one night?
All right. Well, not surprisingly, we are going to disagree on this one. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a recent incident at the Ryder Cup. By now, you've probably heard about Rory McIlroy, who was heckled, and so was his wife at the Ryder Cup. And then in Block C, if you can see behind me here, normally I don't have moving boxes out, but there's a box behind me that you may see. For those of you who are just listening to us and not seeing us on YouTube, this is an actual moving box. It was something that was delivered to my house. And in Block C, we're going to talk about whether I should sue. So we'll be back right after this to talk about all that.
You've been listening to Wrong Way Forward, where bad advice goes to die and then gets resurrected just so we can roast it again.
That's right, Katy. Nobody's off limits, not the gurus, not the influencers, and definitely not Oprah.
Sorry, Oprah.
If you're enjoying the chaos, hit like and subscribe and come back every Thursday for new episodes.
Have a new topic or some disastrously bad advice you want to dissect? Email wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Include your contact info.
Now back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin podcast.
And we're back. And so we've just been talking about Halloween and some advice from the Slate Dear Prudence column. And before we move on to the Ryder Cup, which Justin teased, I just want to say two more things that I think are the wrong way forward and that we all need to be aware of this Halloween. Number one, do not give children toothbrushes and pens and pencils. We always had someone in our neighborhood who was a dentist. We had someone who also owned a car dealership. And it was the biggest letdown of all time to get a toothbrush, with the dentist's name and phone number, written on it. Or
what do you consider good candy, or what should they be giving?
Well, first of all, there was only one or two neighbors in the neighborhood who gave full size. Like full size. I mean, that was the massive jackpot. I don't expect that, but I would say a Reese's cup ranks pretty high for me. But a pen or a toothbrush is just don't participate. This is not an advertising marketing opportunity for you. So stick with the basics, stick with candy.
What about money?
Have you ever gotten money at Halloween?
I think, yeah, I can remember times going to a door and someone would pitch coins into our bags. I don't have any idea how much money it was, but I mean, I guess that's lazy, but interesting.
Well, I would think you would just need more than coins this day, because I take my niece and nephew to 7-Eleven as a treat, and it's about $2 for candy. So we're no longer in the days of the nickel bubble gum. So if you're going to do cash, it needs to be paper.
All right.
So, Justin, why don't you give us a little bit of background about what recently happened with Rory McIlroy at the Ryder Cup?
Sure. And Katie, you're not a golfer, right?
No, I am not. But
Okay.
I like the idea of drinking and hanging out at golf clubs.
Well, who doesn't? So anyway, so at the recent Ryder Cup, for those of you who don't follow golf or don't know much about it, basically the Ryder Cup is the one opportunity where anybody who's a member of the PGA, the Professional Golf Association, they essentially split it into two teams. One of them is the USA team and one of them is the European team. And so people who you may have followed all along the year at the various major events, and rooted for them just because of the fact of who they were. They sort of split into two teams at the Ryder Cup and go against each other, USA versus European. So immediately it's setting up this dichotomy where it's USA versus everyone else, right? And so you can imagine that this year the Ryder Cup was held in New York, and so in the outskirts of New York, and so the audience was very boisterous. And everybody wore their USA gear. They were very proud of the country, all of that. That's a different discussion. But Rory McIlroy, who has been, I would say, divisive. On one hand, he is probably the most beloved golfer. On the other hand, he is one of the people that did not join. There was a number of golfers who joined the Saudi Golf Association called the Live event. He took a stand on that and said he wasn't going to do that. So he was sort of divisive. But in this case, he's also had some questionable issues he's gone through some marriage issues, again, a different conversation. But in this case, he was playing in the Ryder Cup and he was on the European team and he ended up at a hole where he missed his putt. And so to start, the European team had outplayed the USA team from the beginning. And so Rory McIlroy goes to a hole where for some reason he misses a putt and the crowd erupts, basically heckling him for missing the putt. And, in sporting events, and I should be very careful about talking about sporting events because it's not something I did a lot of, but in sporting events, heckling is part of the process, right? If you're at a football game, you boo the other team if they make a bad play or something like that. Well, my argument here is that the crowd took it too far. They were heckling him, screaming things about his going through his marriage issues. His wife was there with whom he's had these marriage issues. And at one point they threw a beer at her. And as an American, I was embarrassed, frankly.
And I agree, Justin. I think this was clearly the wrong way forward. It got to the point where I understand they had about 20 police officers just to keep people calm and at bay. And there was one point when Rory responded, but I think the idea is that he responded. He had just about had it. And what I think is we were the hosts. Mm-hmm. This was held at Bethpage Black. The United States was hosting the Ryder Cup.
Right.
And as the host, you should make people feel at home and feel comfortable and give them kind of, access where, they feel, at ease. And so I think this was incredibly horrible hosting. I think that it's not in good sportsmanship. And I've talked to a few people who said, well, Katy, if the USA goes over to Europe, they're sometimes hearing things like, wanker and et cetera. And that, again, if I heard this once in my childhood, I heard it many a times. Two wrongs don't make a right, Katy. And if everybody's jumping off a bridge, are you going to jump off too?
Sure.
And I think what bothered me a lot about this is Heather McMahon, who was the MC and is a comic, has been accused of leading this F you Rory chant.
Right.
And I just think and using a curse word and an expletive in a public setting is completely tacky. It is very, very rude. And she's saying she didn't start, but what she did is, even if she didn't start, she responded.
She participated.
And
Yeah.
when I think about people who are in roles of authority and leadership, this is when integrity really comes in. And I think that if you talk to some of the famous comics, they would say that's lazy humor, right? For you to just pander to the crowd, that is not being curious and smart and holding your role and really talking about, what is the comedic piece here? It's just pandering to a crowd that got out of control. And she's a paid professional. And what I think is so interesting is I've heard about Heather McMahon quite a bit. She's originally from Atlanta, Georgia, but she went to Ole Miss. And as all of our listeners know, I'm from Mississippi, and she was a DG. And I know
DG is a Delta Gamma. That's a sorority.
DG is a Delta Gamma sorority. And I can tell you, I know quite a few DGs, but particularly I know quite a few DGs from Ole Miss. And I would bet $1 million that they find that behavior abhorrent and really the wrong way forward. And that is not, it was tacky. It was rude. It was, again, not, it's classy with a K. It's classy
absolutely.
with a K. And it was the wrong way forward.
So let me ask you this. Where's the line then? Because, right, sporting events is one of the last things that, as Americans, when I go to a football game, no matter what side of the aisle you're on in politics, you all are there to root for the same team. And that's part of the fun experience. So where's the line drawn between cheering on your team and having some fun booing the other team and taking that too far?
Well, I think, first of all, if anything becomes violent, so throwing a beer at his wife, Erica, that could be actionable, right? And so I think anything where we're moving towards violence and altercation, anything that disrupts the peace, I think is clearly wrong way forward and has gotten to a point of kind of no return. I think using foul language, I think particularly in a public setting, and I've heard this from quite a few of my friends, that it's kind of a rite of initiation to take their children to a pro football game. They grew up going with their parents, and they have said the level of drinking and cussing and foul language and potential fisticuffs, it's gotten to the point where some people don't want to take their kids until they've reached a certain level. And so, again, we've lost that sense of just kind of youth and community. And I think, last but not least, I think it's remembering that, this is in good fun. So a Go USA chant, I think, is completely fine. But from what I understand, not being a golfer, is there's certain decorum rules and there's certain rules in golf. And I was thinking,
golf more than most sports. Golf is kind of, I would say, the pinnacle of, there are so many etiquette rules when you go out and play. And like for Josh, my husband just started playing golf, and he's out there to run his mouth and have fun. And he talks from the beginning to the end, and we fight more on the golf course than it gets. I'm like, you're not allowed to do that. So golf is here with rules.
And my brother said, I was kind of debriefing with him about this, and he said, other players on Team USA were helping Rory, and like raising their arms and doing certain things to try to quiet the crowd, because those are the norms. So I think this is the same thing as, like, you do not go, to, Vogue's, Met Gala, dressed, well, maybe you do because it's the Met Gala and they're pushing fashion forward, but in a fur bikini, or, you don't go to, the Oscars, dressed in, bicycling gear. There is certain decorum. And it's like, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, read the room. And these were people who weren't there to kind of celebrate, which is so fantastic, to celebrate athleticism, to competition, pride in country. Instead, it just really fell to crude, rude, and socially unacceptable behavior, wrong way forward.
And on that, we agree. And so coming back on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about this moving box that's behind me and how it has prompted me to ask the question. And Katy does not know this story yet, so we'll all hear it on the other side. Do I sue? We'll be back on the other side of this break.
Thanks for streaming Wrong Way Forward, the weekly reminder that advice is usually free for a reason. We call out bad advice wherever it hides: boardrooms, break rooms, and even book clubs.
Enjoying this dumpster fire? Like, subscribe, and check back every Thursday for new episodes. Want us to roast your favorite piece of nonsense? Email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to include your contact info. We're not psychic, just judgmental. And now, back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin.
And we're back. And Justin has kind of teased a question of should he sue. I'm terrified about what I'm about to hear. I never know what is going to come out of his mouth, but I like to stay on my toes. So, Justin, are we going to be litigious? Tell me all about it.
All right. So Katy and I, for those of you who don't know, we have a pre-production meeting where we talk about what we're going to talk about in the episode and the different blocks. And so when we talked about this, when I said, I have a question, do I sue? And so we did not talk about this. So you'll see over my shoulder here, this large box. And this arrived at the house, I would say on Friday of last week. And so what it is it is a box that is inside is a dog bed. And the reason there's a dog bed inside is because we are expecting a new puppy to be delivered on November 15th. And we have plane flights to go out and pick up this puppy. For those of you who don't know, I have a dog at home. She's a Cocker Spaniel. She's very, very complicated. She's terrified of everything outside. Inside, she's an angel, but she just lives a very sheltered life. And we felt like she needed a friend. And so
she needs a friend so badly that when I'm there, all she wants to do is lick me.
Which Katy hates. So anyway, so we decided in consultation with our veterinarian, because she's really not friendly to other dogs, that we thought it would be a good idea to have a puppy introduced into the family so that Beckham, our dog, would have a friend and hopefully make her happier. I feel like she's depressed, which I know sounds strange for anybody who's not an animal lover. So anyway, so we called our breeder, the person who we got Beckham from, and we had actually sat through 2 breeding sessions with her where she bred her dog, and we didn't get a puppy from them for one reason or the other. We wanted a female, et cetera, et cetera. So this time when when her dog got pregnant, we were told we were at the top of the list. The dogs were born on September 15th. She sent us the contract. We've got plane arrangements to go out. And on Sunday morning, I wake up to a message from her to quote, "Please call her." And so I am calling her all day frantically because my fear is that something has happened to one of the puppies. And, obviously that'd be upsetting for her because this is her livelihood. But also we have been planning, AKA this box behind me, to have this dog. So she finally calls me at 7:00 that night. And this was her conversation. "I'm so sorry, but you will not be getting a puppy from me. You're not on the list anymore. We bumped you off. I had someone come out of the woodwork. She has 3 female puppies. She's basically said 2 people have come out of the woodwork. And so I'm going
I want to ask, she really said, first of all, she's not very bright if she wrote comes out of the woodwork. I hope she wrote that.
Those are my words. She just said there was someone who was building a house. She's been asking me about a puppy forever. And now she's emerged and she wants one of the dogs. My guess is that because this breeder had the dog, the father won Westminster last year, she's been offered a lot of money for these puppies, and the money that we are paying her, which is not a lot, she got a better offer. And so I told her it was unacceptable. And Monday morning, I called our lawyer to discuss the very question we're talking about, which is, do I sue over a dog being taken from us? Or is this just my emotional brain reacting?
Well, you have a contract, right?
Yes.
So, and it's a legitimate contract, correct? Your lawyers looked at it and said it's legitimate and it would withstand scrutiny?
I do. And I think it just brought me back to the question of some of the episodes we've had. Do you sit with your feelings? Do you go with your gut? Is there 90 seconds to happiness here? All of these things we've talked about before. Is this an emotional reaction to sue, or should I sue to enforce a contract?
So, again, you were within your right, and that person has broken the contract. With that being said, I would ask you a few questions, right? Is this where you want to spend your money? Is this where you want to spend your energy? Where is this on your list of priorities?
Mm-hmm. Or is this about me winning because that's who I am?
correct. That could very much be it. How long will it take to come to a settlement? And if that settlement does not involve you receiving a dog, what is the point where you don't want the dog because they're of a certain age and you'd like to kind of introduce them? And we know Beckham's, your dog, is particular. To me, with all of that being said, it seems like the wrong way forward. It doesn't seem like this is a battle that you might want to spend time and energy on. But when you think about that, what's your reaction?
Well, I try and, I realize how small, in the world of people who are listening to us, how small of a problem this is. So let me just start by that. This is not a child. This is my animal. So I get that. So let me just frame the debate that way, that I understand that this is a big deal for me. For those of you listening, this may sound relatively small. But I had those same questions because Beckham is 3 years old and she is, if we have to wait another year, there is a point where it's just going to be too hard to introduce a dog to the family. I've really struggled with the question, is this just about me winning? Frankly, that I feel like I don't know the answer to that. I think there's definitely a part of that. I think what I said to my lawyer was, I guess we may not get the dog, but I want this to hurt a little because I don't want her to do this to another family and she needs to learn a lesson. And there may be a takeaway from that.
Well, I think you need to stop and think, right? I love that you're like, she needs to learn her lesson. For her, she's probably going to do an economic kind of evaluation of this.
Right.
And so she might say, and people make decisions on a kind of complicated set of factors. And she might say, I will do it again at this price. If you think that probably one of her motives is that somebody has offered a premium price in order to have kind of convenience, and that's what the market bears, she's willing, to take any cost associated with breaking the contract. And you're pursuing this and having it hurt a little bit. There is no definite outcome that she won't do this in the future. My guess is she clearly does not hold up her contracts, and her word doesn't mean her word. So the fact that you're trying to control something completely outside of your control, I think that's part of the question too.
Yeah, that hits the nail on the head. I mean, it is about the fact that I hate not being able to control the situation.
Yeah.
The other thought is that, we're fighting for a dog that we don't even know, but that dog was a member of our family from the minute the breeder sent us pictures of the dog.
Right.
That was a fact I should have included. We had pictures of the dog.
Yes, that does make you seem more human than normal. So what does Josh think? I mean, this is also, you're in a partnership and someone who will also be responsible for this animal. I mean, I think what he thinks carries quite a bit of weight.
And you know him. He is the absolute least confrontational human being alive. And so he would have immediately surrendered and said, that's okay. Well, but he's mad and he does think we should talk to a lawyer. So just a quick update. I heard that note on Monday. On Wednesday, I gave her till Wednesday to respond. On Wednesday, I said, I haven't heard from you. And I said, we plan on talking to the lawyer this afternoon and start accruing attorney's fees. And at that point, we were going to seek reimbursement. And she wrote me back and said, give me a break. I've been busy. I'll let you know by Friday. And so we will have an answer tomorrow. And of course, we will keep our viewers updated. We'd love to know what anybody thinks. You can, of course, email us at thewrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. But still struggling with this one. Would love everybody's thoughts. The question, of course, is, do I sue? And we'll have more updates as our episodes roll on here.
I'm very interested to know too. And I do want to kind of make a plug for our podcast. We have just absolutely love doing this. And as of today, we're in 18 countries and 212 cities, and we keep growing. But what's most helpful is if you are enjoying our content, we'd love for you to click the follow button and to also leave us a review. And we do appreciate all of y'all. And please, as Justin mentioned, please drop us a line because we'd love to hear about what terrible advice you're hearing so we can give our terrible take on it.
And as a teaser for next week, we've started to get sponsorship offers because we've grown so much, and we can't wait to share with what one of those sponsors who wants to be part of our program. You will not believe who this is.
You will not believe.
They want to be part of this program. We're going to politely decline, and we'll share with you next week who they are on Wrong Way Forward. Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, that's a wrap on this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. Remember, the only thing worse than taking bad advice is giving it.
If you've liked what you've heard, like, subscribe, or follow us wherever you stream podcasts. And if you've got a topic or need some advice we'll probably regret giving, email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward.